Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome back to the daily readings of Srila Prabhupada's books. This is where it's at. Sitting together with Rasika devotees. You know what Rasika devotee means? Rasika devotees means devotees who actually have a taste for hearing about Krishna. Sometimes devotees think they get all these ideas about what Rasika means, but actually this is what Rasika means. One who has a taste for hearing about Krishna, especially Srimad-Bhagavatam. So this is where it's at, as far as I'm concerned. I'm just staying here for the rest of my life. Hare Krishna. Okay, welcome to all of you out there in cyberspace. We welcome you with open arms. Sanatana Goswami's prayer to the Srimad-Bhagavatam, revealing to us what the Srimad-Bhagavatam is. And it goes like this. Sarva Shastabdipi Yusha Sarva Vedaika Satpala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnadya Sarva Lokaika Drikprada. O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths, you are the only giver of sight to all the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad Bhagavata Prabho Kalidwan Doditaditya Shri Krishna Parivartita. O life air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master Srimad Bhagavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Shri Krishna. Paramananda Pataya Prema Varshaksharayate Sarvada Sarvasevyaya Shri Krishnaya Namostume. I bow down to you, who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema and always be served by everyone. You are Shri Krishna himself. Madeka Bando Matsangin Madguno Man Mahadana Mannistaraka Madbhagya Mad Ananda Namostute. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. Asadu Saduta Dayin Atini Chochatakara Anamunchakadachin Mam Premna Rit Kantayospura. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 So we've reached the 11th canto, 9th chapter, text number 17. Sorry, 17. Good thing we got our fact checker over here. That's said affectionately, by the way. Okay. We're continuing to get instructed by the Avadhuta Brahmana about how to see things through our spiritual intelligence. 1718. When the Supreme Personality of Godhead displays His own potency in the form of time and guides His material potencies, such as the mode of goodness, into a neutral condition of equilibrium, He remains as the supreme controller of that neutral state, called Pradhan, as well as of the living entities. He is also the supreme worshipable object for all beings, including liberated souls, demigods, and ordinary conditioned souls. The Lord is eternally free from any material designation, and He constitutes the totality of spiritual bliss, which one experiences by seeing the Lord's spiritual form. The Lord thus exhibits the fullest meaning of the word liberation. Purport. One who fixes his mind in the absolute truth, the personality of Godhead, gets immediate relief from the waves of material anxiety, because the Lord's transcendental form is completely free of any material contamination or designation. Less intelligent persons accept the logical doctrine that the Lord is transformed into His creation and maintains no separate individual existence. They falsely imagine that they can merge their individuality into the universal oneness and become exactly equal to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. However, in the opinion of Srimad-Bhagavatam, the personality of Godhead is not impersonal, but is instead full of all transcendental qualities. The three modes of material nature constitute His inferior energy, and the omnipotent time factor upon which the modes rest is the personal expansion of the Lord. Thus the Lord creates, maintains, and annihilates the material manifestation, and yet remains completely apart from it. The conditioned souls who desire to exploit the Lord's inferior creation, the personality of Godhead, to do so, and thus they become imitation enjoyers in the temporary world of matter. But when one gains practical experience that the gross and subtle material bodies are simply coverings of the eternal soul, one gives up the foolishness of material attachment and becomes attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He realizes that his constitutional position is neither to enjoy matter nor merge into the Lord's existence. His real nature is that he is a servant of God. Service rendered to the Lord is eternal, full of bliss and knowledge, and by the potency of such service, one becomes liberated, and his activities become glorious. Such service is eternal, and gradually promotes one to the platform of Kevalanubhavananda Sandoha, or merging into the ocean of bliss by seeing the transcendental personal form of the Lord. Text 19. O subduer of the enemies, at the time of creation, the personality of Godhead expands his own transcendental potency in the form of time, and agitating his material energy, Maya, composed of the three modes of material nature, he creates the Mahat Tattva. Purport. The word Kevala means pure, and indicates that the Lord's Kala Shakti, or time potency, is a transcendental energy non-different from his personal body. The Brahmana addresses King Yadu here as Arindama, subduer of the enemies. This indicates that although the topic of Maya, or illusory creation, is being discussed, the king need not worry, because as a staunch devotee of the Lord, he is able to subdue the real enemies of life, namely lust, anger, and greed, which make one a prisoner in Maya's kingdom. The word Sutram indicates the Mahatattva, on which many material creations rest, just like jewels rest on a thread. In the state of Pradhan, or material equilibrium, the modes of nature do not interact. In the third canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam, Lord Kapila explains in his Sankhya teachings that the Supreme Personality of Godhead agitates the neutral state of nature and thus creation takes place. The created manifest form of nature in which fruitive activities are stimulated is called Mahat Tattva, as indicated in this verse. If one tries to renounce the illusory creation of the Lord by taking shelter of impersonal Vedanta philosophy, thus artificially equating the infinite consciousness of the Lord and the infinitesimal consciousness of the conditioned soul, one's analysis will fall short of reality, far short of reality. The word swamayam in this verse indicates that the illusory potency that covers the conditioned souls is always subordinate to the Lord, whose consciousness is infallible and infinite, and who is always a person. Text 20. According to great sages, that which is based on the three modes of material nature and which manifests the variegated universe is called sutra, the sutra, or Mahat Tattva. Indeed, this universe is resting within that Mahat Tattva, and due to its potency, the living entity undergoes material existence. Purport. The cosmic manifestation is a reality because it emanates from the Supreme Reality, the personality of Godhead. The material world, however, is temporary and full of problems. The conditioned soul foolishly tries to become the lord of this inferior creation and becomes separated from his real friend, the Supreme Lord. In this state, his only business is material sense gratification, and his real knowledge is lost. Text 21. Just as from within himself, the spider expands thread through his mouth, plays with it for some time, and eventually swallows it. Similarly, the Supreme Personality of Godhead expands his personal potency from within himself. Thus the Lord displays the network of cosmic manifestation, utilized according to his purpose, and eventually withdraws it completely within himself. Purport. One who is intelligent obtains spiritual knowledge even from an insignificant creature like the spider. Thus, transcendental knowledge is visible everywhere for one whose eyes are opened in Krishna consciousness. Text 22. If out of love, hate, or fear, an embodied soul fixes his mind with intelligence and complete concentration upon a particular bodily form, he will certainly attain the form that he is meditating upon. Purport. From this verse, it is not hard to understand that if one constantly meditates upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one will achieve a spiritual body, just like that of the Lord. The word diya, with intelligence, indicates complete intellectual conviction in a particular understanding. And similarly, the word sakalam indicates one-pointed attention of the mind. With such complete absorption of consciousness, surely one will attain in the next life a form exactly like that upon which one was meditating. This is another example learned from the insect kingdom, as explained in the following verse, 23. O king, once a wasp forced a weaker insect to enter his hive and kept him trapped there. In great fear, the weak insect constantly meditated upon his captor, and without giving up his body, he gradually achieved the same state of existence as the wasp. Thus one achieves a state of existence according to one's constant concentration. Purport. The following question may be raised. Since the weaker insect in this story did not physically change his body, how can it be said that he achieved the same state of existence as the wasp? Actually, by constant meditation upon a particular object, one's consciousness becomes filled with its qualities. Due to extreme fear, the smaller insect was absorbed in the characteristics and activities of the large wasp, and thus entered into the existence of the wasp. Due to such meditation, he actually took the body of a wasp in his next life. Similarly, although we are conditioned souls, if we absorb our consciousness in Lord Krishna, we can become liberated even before giving up our present body. If our intelligence becomes steady on the spiritual platform by understanding that Lord Krishna is everything, then we can give up unnecessary consciousness of the external body and absorb ourselves in the spiritual pastimes of Vaikuntha. Thus, even before death, one can raise oneself to the spiritual platform and enjoy life as a liberated soul. Or if one is a stubborn fool, then even in this life one can become just like an animal, such as a hog or a dog, constantly thinking of eating and sex life. But human life is actually meant for understanding the science of consciousness and the future results of our meditation. Text 24. O King, from all these spiritual masters, I have acquired great wisdom. Now please listen, as I explain what I learned from my own body. Text 25. The material body is also my spiritual master because it teaches me detachment. Being subject to creation and destruction, it always comes to a painful end. Thus, although using my body to acquire knowledge, I always remember that it will ultimately be consumed by others, and remaining detached, I move about this world. Purport. The words yata tatapi are significant in this verse. Although the body bestows great benefit by enabling one to learn about this world, one should always remember its unhappy, inevitable future. If cremated, the body is burned to ashes by fire. If lost in a lonely place, it is consumed by jackals and vultures. And if buried in a luxurious coffin, it decomposes and is consumed by insignificant insects and worms. Thus, it is described as parakyam, ultimately to be consumed by others. One should, however, carefully maintain bodily health to execute Krishna consciousness, but without undue affection or attachment. By studying the body's birth and death, one can acquire virakti viveka, the intelligence to detach oneself from useless things. The word avasita indicates conviction. One should be convinced of all the truths of Krishna consciousness. Text 27. A man attached to the body accumulates money with great struggle to expand and protect the position of his wife, children, property, domestic animals, servants, homes, relatives, friends, and so on. He does all this for the gratification of his own body. As a tree before dying produces the seed of a future tree, the dying body manifests the seed of one's next material body in the form of one's accumulated karma, thus assuring the continuation of material existence. The material body sinks down and dies. Purport. One might argue, among all the gurus mentioned thus far, the material body is certainly the best, since it awards the detachment and fine intelligence that enable one to engage in the devotional service of the Lord. Thus we should serve the body, although it is temporary, with great attachment, or risk the offense of ungratefulness. How can detachment from the body be recommended when the body is endowed with so many wonderful qualities? The answer is given in this verse. The body does not award detachment and knowledge in the manner of some benevolent teacher. Rather, it causes so much pain and misery that any common sense person cannot help but being convinced of the uselessness of material life. Just as a tree produces the seeds of the next tree and then dies, the body's lusty desires induce the conditioned soul to create a further chain of karma. Finally, the body, having paved the way for unlimited suffering in material existence, drops dead. According to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Deha indicates both the gross body and the subtle body, the subtle mental body. Those who do not clearly understand the difference between body and soul falsely think that body and soul are identical and that one can find perfect happiness in bodily sense gratification. But those who foolishly accept the temporary body as all important cannot be compared with self-realized souls who intelligently understand the superiority of the eternal soul. Text 27. A man who has many wives is constantly harassed by them. He is responsible for their maintenance, and thus all the ladies constantly pull him in different directions, each struggling for her self-interest. Oh, sorry, that's me. Sorry. Similarly, the material senses harass the conditioned soul, pulling him in many directions at once. On one side, the tongue is pulling him to arrange tasty food. Then thirst drags him to get a suitable drink. Simultaneously, the sex organs clamor for satisfaction, and the sense of touch demands soft, sensuous objects. The belly the belly harasses him until it is filled. The ears demand to hear pleasing sounds, and the sense of smell hankers for pleasant aromas, and the fickle eyes clamor for pleasing sights. Thus the sense organs and limbs, all desiring satisfaction, pull the living entity in many directions. Purport. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur mentions that after understanding this verse, one should merely offer without attachment the bare necessities to the guru of one's body. One should keep one's body fit and working in the simplest way possible, and that is the sum and substance of service to this so-called guru. If one desires to faithfully serve the body, one should consider that the body pulls the consciousness of the conditioned soul in many ways at once, and thus, for the servant of the body, there is no possibility of understanding God or even of becoming peaceful. Text 28. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, expanding His own potency, Maya Shakti, created innumerable species of life to house the conditioned souls. Yet by creating the forms of trees, reptiles, animals, birds, snakes, and so on, the Lord was not satisfied within His heart. Then He created human life, which offers the conditioned soul sufficient intelligence to perceive the absolute truth, and became pleased. Purport. God has specifically created the human form of life to facilitate the liberation of the conditioned soul. Therefore, one who abuses human life prepares his path to hell. As stated in the Vedas, Purushatve Chavistaram Atma. In the human form of life, there is good possibility of understanding the eternal soul. The Vedas also state, Tapyo Gam Anaya Ta Abruvan Navai no Yam Malam Miti Tapyo Shwam Anayat Ta Abruvan Navai no Yam Alam Miti. The purport of this Shruti mantra is that lower forms of life, such as the cow and horse, are not actually suitable to fulfill the purpose of creation. But human life awards the opportunity to understand one's eternal relationship with God. Thus, one must control the material senses and fulfill the real purpose of human life. If one takes to Krishna consciousness, the Supreme Lord personally feels happiness. Oh, let's read that again. If one takes to Krishna consciousness, the Supreme Lord personally feels happiness and gradually reveals himself to his devotee. The Lord's material creation consists of the living entities and dead matter, which the less intelligent try to enjoy. The Lord, however, is not satisfied by those species that blindly strive for sense gratification without understanding spiritual nature. We are suffering due to our forgetfulness of Krishna and the blissful situation of his abode. If we accept the Lord as protector and shelter and execute his order, we can easily revive our eternal blissful nature as parts and parcels of the personality of Godhead. It is for this purpose that the Lord has created human life. Text 29. After many, many births and deaths, one achieves the rare human form of life, which, although temporary, affords one the opportunity to attain the highest perfection. Thus, a sober human being should quickly endeavor for the ultimate perfection of life, as long as his body, which is always subject to death, has not fallen down and died. After all, sense gratification is available even in the most abominable species of life, whereas Krishna consciousness is possible only for a human being. Purport. Material life essentially means repeated birth and death. Even the lowest forms of life, such as reptiles, insects, pigs, and dogs, have ample opportunity for sense gratification. Even ordinary houseflies have a busy sex life and thus multiply rapidly. Human life, however, enables one to understand the absolute truth and is therefore full of grave responsibility. Since the valuable human life is not eternal, we should do the needful to achieve the highest perfection. Krishna consciousness. Before death appears, we should seriously cultivate our real self-interest. One can experience Krishna consciousness in the association of devotees of the Lord. Without their association, one is in danger of being attracted to an impersonal conception of life, which causes one to fall away from devotional service to the absolute truth. Or being discouraged by one's failure to understand the absolute truth, one may return to the false platform of sense gratification. In conclusion, human life is meant for cultivating Krishna consciousness under the guidance of the experienced, self-realized devotees of the Lord. Text 30. Having learned from my spiritual masters, I remain situated in realization of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and fully renounced and enlightened by realized spiritual knowledge, wander the earth without attachment or false ego. Huh? Let him lay down there. Mm-hmm.
What do you see? What do you see? Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, everyone. I had to take a little break to give some solace to Bhakta Jai, who has epilepsy. Text 31. Although the absolute truth is one without a second, the sages have described him in many different ways. Therefore, one may not be able to acquire very firm or complete knowledge from one spiritual master. Purport. Srila Sridhar Swami comments on this verse as follows. The statement that one requires many spiritual masters certainly needs explanation, since practically all great saintly persons of the past did not take shelter of many spiritual masters, but rather accepted one. The words Giyate Bahudarshibihi, the absolute truth, is glorified in many ways by the sages, indicate the personal and impersonal understanding of the absolute truth. In other words, some sages describe only the Lord's impersonal effulgence, which is without spiritual variety, whereas others describe the Lord's manifest form as the personality of Godhead. Thus, merely by hearing from many different authorities, one cannot actually learn the highest perfection of life. The proliferation of differing spiritual authorities is useful only to counteract the living entity's tendency to be grossly materialistic. Different spiritual philosophers create faith in the existence of the soul and may be accepted at that level. But as will be clarified in later verses, The spiritual master who ultimately gives perfect knowledge is one. Srila Jiva Goswami comments as follows on this verse. Since it is commonly understood that one is to accept a single spiritual master, why is it recommended that one learn from many so-called spiritual masters appearing in the forms of ordinary material objects? The explanation is that one's worshipable spiritual master will instruct one in many departments of knowledge by giving lessons gleaned from ordinary objects. As recommended by the Brahmana Avadhuta, one can strengthen the teachings received from one's acharya and avoid transgressing his orders by observing ordinary things in nature. One should not mechanically receive the teachings of one's guru. One should not mechanically receive the teachings of one's guru. The disciple should be thoughtful and with his own intelligence realize in practice what he has heard from his spiritual master by observing the world around him. In this sense, one may accept many gurus, although not those who preach against the knowledge received from the bona fide spiritual master. In other words, one should not hear from persons like the atheist Kapila. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur also comments on this verse as follows. It is stated in Srimad-Bhagavatam, Tasmat Gurum Prapadyeta Jigyasu Shreya Uttamam. Therefore, one should approach a bona fide spiritual master if one actually desires to achieve the highest perfection of life. Similarly, in chapter 10, verse 5 of this canto, the personality of Godhead himself states, Mad abhigyam gurum shantam upasita madatmakam. One must serve a bona fide spiritual master who is in full knowledge of my personality and who is not different from me. There are many similar verses in Vedic literature indicating that one must take shelter of a single bona fide spiritual master. We also have the examples of innumerable great saintly persons who did not accept more than one spiritual master. Thus, it is a fact that we should accept one bona fide spiritual master and receive from him the particular mantra that one is to chant. I myself certainly follow this principle and worship my bona fide spiritual master. However, in worshipping one's acharya, one may take help from good and bad examples. By observing examples of good behavior, one will be strengthened in devotional service. And in seeing negative examples, one will be forewarned and avoid danger. In this way, one may accept many ordinary material objects as one's spiritual masters, considering them as shiksha gurus, or gurus who give important lessons for spiritual advancement. Thus, in the Lord's own words, Mad abhigyam gurum shantam upasita madatmakam. One should approach a single bona fide spiritual master who is in full knowledge of the Lord's personality and sincerely worship him, considering him to be madatmakam, or non-different from the Lord himself. This statement does not contradict what the Lord has presented in the teachings of Brahmana. If one receives the teachings of one's acharya, but keeps them locked up in his brain as theoretical dogma, one will make little advancement. To develop steady, complete knowledge, one must see the teachings of one's acharya everywhere. Thus, a Vaishnava offers all respects to anyone or anything that gives him further enlightenment in the path of worshipping his bona fide acharya, who is non-different from Krishna. Among the many gurus mentioned by the Brahmana, some give positive instructions and others give negative instructions. Pingala, the prostitute, and the young girl who took off her bracelets provide examples of proper conduct, whereas the hapless pigeons and the foolish honeybee provide examples of behavior to be avoided. In both cases, one's spiritual knowledge is enriched. Thus, one should not misunderstand the meaning of this verse in a way contradictory to the Lord's statement, Abhigyam, Mad Abhigyam Gurum Shantam Upasita Madatmakam. Bhagavatam 11:10-5. Text 32. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, having thus spoken to King Yadu, the wise Brahmana accepted obeisances and worship from the king and felt pleased within himself. Then bidding farewell, he left exactly as he had come. Purport. Srila Sridhar Swami gives evidence from Srimad-Bhagavatam that the Brahmana Avadhuta was actually the incarnation of Godhead, Dattatreya. The Bhagavatam 274 states, Yat pada pankaja paraga pavitra deha yogartim apurabayim yaduhai yahadyaha. Many yadus, haihayas, etc. became so purified by the grace of the lotus feet of Dattatreya, the Lord, that they obtained both material and spiritual blessings. This verse mentions that Yadu was purified by contact with the lotus feet of Dattatreya. And similarly, the present verse states, Vandito Chwarchito Ragya. Yadu worshipped the lotus feet of the Brahmana. Thus, according to Srila Sridhar Swami, the Avadhuta Brahmana is the personality of Godhead himself, and this is confirmed by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Text 33. O Uddhava, hearing the words of the Avadhuta, the saintly King Yadu, who was the forefather of our own ancestors, became free from all material attachment, and thus his mind was evenly fixed on the spiritual platform. Purport. Here the Lord praises his own dynasty, called Yaduvangsha, because there appeared in that dynasty many great self-realized kings. King Yadu was enlightened by Dattatreya in the form of an Avadhuta Brahmana, who taught the king to fix his consciousness on the spiritual platform of detachment by simply observing the creation of God. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports. Thus end the purports by the humble servants of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada to the 11th canto, 9th chapter of Srimad-Bhagavatam, entitled Detachment from All that is Material. Jai Dattatreya. Jai. Okay, that was really, what can I say about that? Let's go a little further. Chapter 10, the nature of fruitive activity. In this chapter, Lord Sri Krishna refutes the philosophy of the followers of Jaimini and describes to Uddhava how the spirit soul, bound within the material body, can develop pure transcendental knowledge. The Vaishnava, or one who has taken shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu, should observe the rules and regulations found in the Pancharatra and other revealed scriptures. According to his own natural qualities and work, he should follow the code of Varnashram in a spirit free from motivation. The so-called knowledge received through one's material senses, mind and intelligence, is as useless as the dreams experienced by a sleeping person attached to sense gratification. Therefore, one should give up work performed for sense gratification and accept work as a matter of duty. When one has come to understand something of the truth of the self, he should give up material work performed out of duty and simply engage himself in the service of the bona fide spiritual master, who is the manifest representative of the personality of Godhead. The servant of the spiritual master should have very firm affection for his guru, should be anxious to receive from him knowledge of the absolute truth, and should be devoid of envy and the tendency to talk nonsense. The soul is distinct from the gross and subtle material bodies. The spirit soul who has entered into the material body accepts bodily functions according to the reactions of his own past activities. Therefore, only the bona fide, transcendental, spiritual master is capable of demonstrating pure knowledge of the self. The followers of Jaimini and other atheistic philosophers accept regulated material work as the purpose of life. But Krishna refutes this by explaining that the embodied soul who has come into contact with segmented material time takes upon himself a perpetual chain of births and deaths and is therefore forced to suffer the consequent happiness and distress. In this way, there is no possibility that one who is attached to the fruits of his material work can achieve any substantial goal in life. The pleasures of heaven and other destinations, which are achieved by sacrificial rituals, can be experienced for only a short time. After one's enjoyment is finished, one must return to this mortal sphere to partake of lamentation and suffering. On the path of materialism, there is certainly no uninterrupted or natural happiness. Text 1. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, taking full shelter in me, with the mind carefully fixed in the devotional service of the Lord, as spoken by me, one should live without personal desire and practice the social and occupational system called varnashrama. Purport. In the previous chapters, Lord Krishna described through the story of an Avaduta Brahmana the qualities and character of a saintly person. Now the Lord describes the practical means for achieving such a saintly position. In the Pancharatra and other scriptures, the personality of Godhead gives instructions for executing devotional service. Similarly, in the Bhagavad Gita 4.13, the Lord says, Chaturvarnyamaya Shishtam Gunakarma Vibhagashaha. I have personally created the Varnashram system. There are innumerable rules and regulations in the Varnashram system, and the devotee should execute those which do not contradict the process of devotional service. The term Varna indicates different classes of human beings, some in the mode of ignorance, some in the mode of passion, and some in the mode of liberated platform, in the mode of goodness. Devotional service to the Lord is executed on the liberated platform, and therefore some injunctions for those persons in passion and ignorance may be contradictory to the regulated principles for those on the liberated platform. Therefore, under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master, who is non-different from the Lord, one should execute the basic principles of Varnashram in a way favorable for advancement in Krishna consciousness. Text 2. A purified soul should see that because the conditioned souls who are dedicated to sense gratification have falsely accepted the objects of sense pleasure as truth, all their endeavors are doomed to failure. Purport. In this verse, the Lord describes the process of becoming desireless. All material sense objects, including those perceived by their form, taste, flavor, touch, or sound, are temporary. We now see our family and nation, but ultimately they will disappear. Even our own body, by which we perceive them, will disappear. Thus, the inevitable result of material enjoyment is viparyaya, or great suffering. The word Vishuddhatma indicates those who have purified themselves by executing the regular duties of devotional service. They can clearly see the hopeless frustration of material life, and thus they become akatmatma, or great souls, free from material desire. Text 3. One who is sleeping may see many objects of sense gratification in a dream, but such pleasurable things are merely creations of the mind and are thus ultimately useless. Similarly, the living entity who is asleep to his spiritual identity also sees many sense objects, but these innumerable objects of temporary gratification are creations of the Lord's illusory potency and have no permanent existence. One who meditates upon them, impelled by the senses, uselessly engages his intelligence. Purport. Because the fruits of material work are temporary, it ultimately does not matter whether or not one obtains them. The final result is the same. Materialistic activities can never award the highest perfection of life, Krishna consciousness. The material intelligence, impelled by the senses, strongly desires sense gratification. As stated here, Vedatma di, such intelligence actually separates one from one's real self-interest. Thus the intelligence, absorbed in that which is materially favorable and unfavorable, becomes divided in pursuit of innumerable categories of material advancement. Such divided intelligence is impotent and cannot understand the absolute truth, the personality of Godhead. I'm going to repeat that. Thus the intelligence, absorbed in that which is materially favorable and unfavorable, becomes divided in pursuit of innumerable categories of material advancement. Can someone think of a verse? Gita verse? Vyabhasayatmika buddhir ekeha kudunandana bahusha kayanantascha buddhayo visayanam. Those who are on this path are resolute, they're fixed. And those who aren't, their attention and intelligence is played all over the place. Such divided intelligence is impotent and cannot understand the absolute truth, the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. The devotees of the Lord, however, have their intelligence fixed on one point, Krishna. They meditate upon the Lord's form, qualities, pastimes, and devotees, and thus their intelligence is never separated from the absolute truth. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita 2:41, Vyavasayatmika buddhi. We got a little ahead of ourselves there. Sorry about that. Ekiha kudunandana bahusha kayanantascha buddhayo vivasayanam. Those who are on this path are resolute in purpose, and their aim is one. O beloved child of the Kurus, the intelligence of those who are irresolute is many-branched. If one is not Krishna conscious, he is uselessly dreaming without any understanding of his eternal situation. The material intelligence will always devise novel means of achieving happiness, and therefore one bounces from one fruitless program of sense gratification to another, ignoring the simple fact that all material things are temporary and will disappear. In this way, one's intelligence becomes infected by lust and greed, and such infected intelligence cannot bring one to the true goal of life. One should hear from the bona fide spiritual master, whose intelligence is pure, and then one will come to Krishna consciousness, the highest perfection of life. Okay, we'll stop there. Hare Krishna. Text 4, 10:4. And move on to our open mic part of our program. How you doing over there? Okay?
Good, yeah. Thank
Good.
you very much.
Thanks.
Much better.
Good.
Let me sit up, actually.
Yes, Bhakti Matthew.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, this what we finished reading got me thinking about the verse in Bhagavad Gita about how the contemplation of the objects of the senses is the beginning of how we fall back into the material pool. But I'm wondering, how much should those objects be contemplated on for the service of Krishna? Like, just
Well, you
Is
have to
there-
think. You have to. When you do something for Krishna, like I'm reading from this computer, so I'm looking at the computer, and I'm conscious of the computer. So it's not a matter of how much should we contemplate. If you're doing something in devotional service, you are contemplating. Let's go through the verse now. You said it started you thinking about this verse. Jayato vishyang pungsa sangasteshu pajayate sangat sanjayate kama. Let's go through it step by step. What's that first part mean? Jayato vishyang pungsa sangasteshu pajayate. What does it mean? Not sure. By contemplating the objects of the senses, one develops attachment for them. So when we're concentrating on this, we're not developing attachment for this. We're developing attachment for Krishna. And then, Jayato Vishayang Pungsa Sangat Sanjayate Kama. When you dwell on sense objects without connecting them with Krishna, then what happens? You become very attached. And what is that very much attached called? Come on, you can do it. Yes, lust. So then, kamat, what happens?
is a loss of intelligence.
No, there's something that happens first. If you learn these books, if you learn these books, yes, no, but first, before anger, you try to satisfy your senses through lust, and what happens? Frustration. Got it. So control your mind and learn these verses, and then it will help you a lot. And then what? Anger. From frustration comes anger. Krodad bhavati samoha. And when one becomes angry, one becomes bewildered. Samoha bibrama. Then one loses one's intelligence. Confused. To do anything. Someone who is that angry will do anything. We see it every day. Road rage, domestic violence. These are not isolated incidents anymore. They used to be relatively isolated incidents, but now they're so commonplace, they don't know what to do about it. They can't even think about what to do about it now. Then you lose your intelligence, and then you can do anything. Then you fall down into the material pool, which we coined the phrase bloop. When you throw a rock into a pool, it goes bloop. Yeah. Got it. Yeah, it happened one time.
Okay. Hare Krishna.
Oh, Hare Krishna. Okay. trying, keep trying, keep trying. What else? Yes, Sarva. I was hoping you'd take us somewhere.
There was a verse we read about the importance of having one spiritual master and not, getting confused by the wrong sources and so forth. I was just wanting to ask about, in ISKCON we see many inspiring senior devotees. So is it okay to take inspiration without personal, guidance from each one, but just being very inspired by their example?
Well, Prabhupada explains that if you define Shiksha Guru as Chaitanya Charitamrita defines it, equal manifestation of Krishna. It's not that just your friend or your Sankirtan leader or, your temple commander, or, just because he's in a position of authority over you, that means he's your Shiksha Guru. Anybody who's propounding that philosophy doesn't know the philosophy. So then Prabhupada said, the difference between the Diksha and the Shiksha Guru is that one has a different function. The Diksha Guru, it has the function of giving you the mantra, and you say your vows in front of him, in front of the fire, in front of the deities, in front of the devotees. And he takes on your behalf, the reactions of your sinful activities. And anybody who's actually taken initiation sincerely knows that. They've experienced the lightness that you feel, after the fire sacrifice and the chanting of the mantras and the vows and everything. So that person becomes the representative of God to you. That's why it said here in these purports that you can have one Diksha Guru. But you can have many Shiksha Gurus. But generally, those Shiksha Gurus, if they're going to act on that same platform, are going to be approved by your Diksha Guru. They should be of the same mood, same, there should be a connection. Now it's also true, as we just heard in these chapters, that we also see through the intelligence we get from our spiritual master. Because, Dattatreya, that's why the realization came at the end, that this Abhidhamma Brahma was Dattatreya, incarnation of God. So he can become his own guru in that sense. So the meaning is that you can't really see the world like that unless you've heard the philosophy properly, unless you're actually understanding what the material nature is, where it comes from. The Sambandha Jnana of spiritual life, beginning of knowledge, spiritual knowledge. That's what I took from what, is that right? Is that right? That's what I took from that section at the end. So, to answer your question, I think that persons become confused when they just take knowledge from this one, and this one, and this one, and that one. And sometimes they won't be consistent, and they'll be like here. Before Shukadeva Swami walked on the scene, there were all kinds of sages. Really, that's not anybody, the greatest sages in the universe. But they, Jaimini and Agastya and they all have little different ideas. But as soon as they saw Shukadeva, just by looking at his form, the physiognomy of his body, they all bowed down. Okay, he's the one. Krishna sent him, let's hear from him. And then he got the truth. But what did he do? He told the story of how so many different authorities have explained the same thing in so many different ways and so many. So we shouldn't think that we can only hear from our Diksha Guru, which is maybe something you were saying, you were suggesting. If somebody tells you the truth, you should be able to accept the truth. If you've actually accepted a bona fide spiritual master, and you know, then when somebody tells you something that's actually true according to Shastra, then you'll accept it. And on the other hand, if somebody tells you something that's not actually true, it's not actually according to the instructions of Shastra, then you will reject it. So we're not just accepting a personality or a body, you know. I mean, actually, Prabhupada wrote in his Vyasapuja offering to Bhaktisiddhanta in 1936. It was not long after Bhaktisiddhanta left. And he said that there's only one guru, and that guru is Krishna. Because it's Krishna in the heart that's accepting and instructing the person who can actually instruct on his behalf. Speaking of guru, hey Guruji. Haribol. Oh, he went running out looking after his mother. You saw his mother looking after him. Oh, he left his phone.
She said, I can't find him. Here's his phone. Okay. I took her to lunch. She took her to lunch, and I said, if he's upstairs, probably in the reading if he's not around here.
No, he left here because Nitya said that your mother's looking for you.
Can you handle this situation? It's above my pay grade.
Did you hear that? Above his pay grade. You're not capable of being the universal mother yet. Does that touch it? It touched
you
it?
can text him and tell him you got his phone on his phone. That's what I would.
Yeah, go ahead.
I guess I just want. I just get inspiration from devotees that are following Prabhupada sincerely and, serving and as he would want them. But I don't get personal instruction from every one of them. Is that okay, or is that because
that means you've got intelligence? That's using your intelligence. That's what this is. These chapters are teaching us. You have to use with volition, your own volition. You have to use your intelligence. Prabhupada said he wanted independently thoughtful disciples. He didn't want dogmatists. But independently thoughtful doesn't mean that you're independent of Krishna or independent of everyone and everyone else. It means you have to use your individual intelligence to surrender to Krishna. And how can we know? This is the question. How can we know? If hearing a little from here and hearing a little from here and hearing a little here is not focusing our spiritual intelligence properly, if we're becoming more confused about something, some issue or some this or some that. I use the example of different issues they have. And somebody says, well, we heard from this Upanishad, or we heard from this guru, or we have this from the commentary of such and such previous acharya, and then they argue. This is not in our line, this arguing thing. It's not in our line. That's why Rupa Goswami just signed a piece of paper and sent the big, Digvijay on his way. That's why Lord Chaitanya just embarrassed the Keshava Kashmiri, but in private, not in public. Saved his face. So, we accept what is favorable and we reject what is unfavorable. And that's the beginning of surrender. So how we tell whether something is favorable, it increases our faith. It increases our determination. It clarifies our vision. It makes things more precise, our understanding. So we don't become confused as we go down the road. We won't say contradictory things to people to make them,
You won't get ruled by the
conch shell of Maya. Conch shell of Maya. Yeah, exactly. Materialists, when they speak, they're like the conch shells of Maya also. Go ahead, Dr. Patrick.
Yeah, I had some practical experience.
Okay, smile, you're on candid camera. All of you.
It was kind of interesting today. I got a little bit of practical experience of what was being spoken about earlier by the Brahmana about using the body as a spiritual master or the guru. And when we were cutting vegetables, I was just seeing how big and plump and pretty all the vegetables were, and I was thinking how no matter how beautiful we grow these bodies, we kind of nourish our bodies, it's going to be eaten in the end by somebody else. It's going to be somebody's food. And
No matter how
really
pretty it
related.
looks, we're going to slice it up, put it in the subject. Yeah, that's right. That's right. I mean, isn't it amazing? Isn't Krishna amazing? That here we are in this body, and we know, this is what Yudhishthira Maharaj said when Yamaraj asked those questions to him, asked that one question in particular. What's the most amazing thing? What's the most wonderful thing in the world? And he answered it. He said, the most amazing thing in the world is that everyone has died. Every single person in the world has died. But we're thinking we're not going to die. That's it. That's how powerful Maya is. Therefore, we can't think of how to plan for that because we can't conceive that we're going to die. But that's the mercy of old age. You start to get wrinkles, and you can't jump, and you can't walk properly, and you can't. You bruise easy, So that's mercy. Slows us down so we can go inside. Keep our minds fixed on the real goal of life, the real meaning of life, the real purpose of life. Okay, go ahead, Jaya. Give us some enlightenment.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
You must be special because now you got the couch to yourself.
Must have scared everybody else off of this thing.
Either that or you were king in your last life. Yeah, you were king in your last life. You needed a king, needed a throne. Okay, go ahead.
I just wanted to mention how text 19, so beautifully scientific, it is explained. Again and again, in any school, materialist school, they'll talk about how the universe can be described as a transfers of energy. And the only reason why one form of energy would be transferred to another part of the universe is because of an imbalance. Or else you're not going to get a reaction like it was stated in text 19. If elements are in balance, then there is no reaction. So when we look up at the cosmic manifestation and we see a shooting star and we see energy going from one point of the universe to another part of the universe, that was caused by an imbalance. And so all the manifestation is a reaction to an action. So what was that initial action that caused all the other dominoes to fall and to transfer that momentum, that energy? Right here it is stated perfectly that the modes of nature were agitated by Krishna, and the rest is history. We look up at the stars and we say, oh, wow. And those are the dominoes that are all slowly transferring that momentum that was initially set forth.
Well, it's not just it is, but it's also time.
Time
is in every atom.
In every atom.
In other words, he starts it off by his glance, but that glance, by that glance, he enters into every atom in the form of time, and that's what time is. This is so far above the material scientists' the possibilities to think.
Mm-hmm.
But we who are not scientists, we're not educated like you are in science. And Prabhupada also was not educated in science, but he could blow away anybody that he met, because he knew this science. Therefore I repeat my admonition. Read the third canto of the Bhagavatam very carefully, and you'll get details that'll stimulate your intelligence. Now I gotta go. It's 6 o'clock, and Hare Krishna, we have program over in the temple we want the devotees to go to. Thank you very much, everybody. Please, I keep forgetting to ask you to share and care by spreading these readings, but please do. And we'll see you tomorrow, Monday, 6 o'clock Central Time, right here in the live studios at Radha Lane in ISKCON of Houston. Srimad-Bhagavatam ki jai. Yavaduta Brahman ki jai. Dattatreya ki jai. Gaur Premanandi. See you tomorrow. Hare Krishna.